For Crema Media's Polity, I'm Sane Dlamini. Kim Makaska joins me to discuss her book titled Scarred But Not for Life. Her story made remarkable headlines in 2011 when she was brutally dragged 780 meters beneath a taxi in Lone Hill, north of Johannesburg. Your taxi accident on the 13th of September 2011 made headlines in the country. Can you tell us about the horrific accident and how it has affected your life?
So the accident happened early on the morning of the 13th of September. What happened was we were trying to cross an intersection, my fiance and I, and the taxi driver came from the right turn only lane trying to cross the intersection as well. He misjudged the gap that he had and ended up hitting our vehicle. That was nothing major, it was a small bumper bashing, and we pulled over to exchange details. Initially I stayed in the vehicle and my fiance approached the taxi driver. I watched what was going on from the vehicle, from inside our vehicle, and I saw that the taxi driver wouldn't open his window, wouldn't look at my fiance, was just totally uncooperative. So eventually I made the decision to get out of the vehicle to see if he would possibly respond better to me. And I made my way across the distance that it was. It was early morning, lots of traffic. So I was approaching the taxi slowly, obviously being cautious of my surroundings. And he watched me walking towards him all the way until I was just about to get to his window when he accelerated and hit me. I fell almost to the ground, but not entirely, and as I tried to get up, I screamed at him, "You can't go, I'm standing here." He looked at me again, accelerated into me and drove off up the road until he was forced to stop.
And how has it affected your life?
So when the accident happened, I was practicing as an advocate. I was in my first year of practice. The amount of time I had to spend in hospital, the initial period was 3 months in ICU in isolation, but then for 4.5 years after that, I was in and out of hospital having the various procedures and operations I needed. As a result of the injuries and the time necessary to recover, I ended up losing my practice as an advocate. I ended up not being able to go back to practice as an advocate just because of the demands of what the profession entails. So that's one way it changed my life. Like I said, when the accident happened, I was with my fiance. So we ended up getting married in 2012, but we had to live with my parents for those 4.5 years so that my mom, who's a nurse, could assist with my recovery. And the impact of what had happened never allowed us to have a normal relationship or a normal marriage. I mean, newlyweds, it's unusual that you live with your parents or his in-laws for that period of time. So those are two big ways that affected my life. And then obviously, my future will be affected in terms of the injuries I have, the way they limit me, what my capabilities now are, the fact that I need to be on chronic medication probably all my life, the fact that I'll need further operations, knee replacements and hip replacements. It's not a short-term sort of effect.
Some of the reports about the accident were not accurate, such as the allegation that the driver fled the scene because he felt threatened. Can you please clarify these matters to us?
Yeah, so what happened was, like I explained in your first question, how the accident happened, he accelerated and started driving off up the road. After he had already hit me and I was being dragged underneath the taxi, my fiance ran after him and punched through the window to try and pull the keys out of the ignition or pull him off the pedals. I don't know what goes through your mind in the short time you have to react. But as a result of him punching through the window and trying to get hold of the taxi driver, a version of events that came out was that the assault or the attack by my fiance on the taxi driver happened first, and as a result he accelerated and drove into me, not realizing I was there. From the evidence and the pictures of the scene, it's clear that that was never the case. You can see where the point of impact and the blood trail that begins before you see the glass that was smashed as a result of my fiance punching through the window. But you know, it's sensationalism, I suppose, to an extent, and the media reports what they hear. We also refrained from giving interviews for a long time because we knew there would be legal matters arising from the incident. So that may have been the only version they were told.
Has the taxi driver ever been held to account? What happened to him? Have you ever spoken to him? What would you say?
No, I've never spoken to him. I have seen him in court a few times because I was subpoenaed to give evidence. There's never been any verbal interaction between us. When I have seen him in court, he gives me almost a death stare, glares me up and down. So I don't get any sense of remorse or regret. And he was charged with attempted murder and various other offences, but at the last time we were supposed to appear in court was in December 2015, and he failed to do so. So a warrant of arrest was issued, but he since hasn't been found or prosecuted further.
You speak highly of how your family were supportive during the whole ordeal. Your mom even took 3 months unpaid leave to take care of you after you were discharged. How did your family contribute to your healing process?
I think they contributed hugely. I mean, there was never a day in ICU. I was in isolation. It's a little glass box where, you know, you only really interact with your nurses and doctors. But my family, someone from my family, between my family, my immediate family and my fiance, someone was always there to keep me company. Even if I was in and out of consciousness, I had someone there knowing that I wasn't totally alone, which helped a lot. My mom did take a long time off work to nurse me after the initial 3 months in hospital. And my sister also, she was studying at the time, so she was at varsity and had a lot of flexibility. She was by my side, helping me with whatever, tending to my every need and request, you know, whatever I needed, she was there. Like I said, my fiance and I moved into my parents' house, so they were very welcoming and very accommodating. The support of my family went a very long way in me recovering the way I did.
Your injuries were very serious, including fears that you could have lost your leg or be brain damaged. Have you been able to overcome the depression and desperation associated with these injuries?
To be honest, I didn't really ever feel depressed or desperate about the injuries I had. I was worried about losing my leg initially or suffering brain damage, and I had mentally decided that if either of those would be a result, I wasn't going to fight. So as soon as I woke up, I was ventilated, so I couldn't communicate normally, but I somehow was able to ask the questions about brain damage and losing a leg. And when I got the answers from my mom, who said, no, you're not brain damaged and I don't think you'll lose your leg, I decided, okay, then I can overcome this. And the other injuries were I just accepted as you know, a result of what had happened.
Your situation must have been compounded when you became aware of an affair between your husband and a friend of yours. How did you cope with this?
I think again, the support of family was a big savior in helping me get through everything. And I think I'm quite logical and practical, and I think I was able to rationalize what had happened in terms of the affair to a degree, in the sense that my husband then and I had never had a normal marriage. We had never had a normal relationship since shortly after becoming engaged. Also, he went through the trauma with me, and I think all of those things made it, I don't want to say easy to understand, but helped me to I suppose rationalize it a little bit. I don't think if not for the situation we were in, and if not for the accident, I never would have even tried to overcome something like that, and I would have said, not a chance. Is there a second chance? But because of our situation, I worked through it. Not to say it was easy, and it took a long time to get to the point of letting things go. But yeah, that's probably how I coped.
Has the accident changed your life? What life lessons have you learned along the way?
Well, physically, my life has been changed, with the injuries I have and the limitations. In terms of a career, it's affected that. My husband and I have now since become divorced. So I don't say that's entirely related to the accident, but I think it definitely was a contributing factor, and everything that came with it, the trauma, just the abnormality of our situation all affected that. So I think, major areas in my life have been affected. The lessons I've learned, the main lesson I've learned, I think, is that I always believed that your mind is a very powerful tool, and if you're able to channel it in the right way, it can be very advantageous. And I think going through this and being in hospital for the time I was, having almost 40 medical procedures, all under lengthy general anesthetics, and just coming out of it without depression and without feeling like a victim, has emphasized the belief in me that if you can get your mind right, you're capable of anything.
That was Kim Makaska speaking to Crima Media's Polity about her book titled Scarred But Not for Life.